Hi, Shalom, peace and blessings, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, the King of Kings, the Melech Melekim. I'm out here in the field of Immer Farrow wheat, or Immer Farrow. The Hebraic name is Kitah. It's an ancient grain. It's a follow-up video on a previous one I did when I was cutting this into a swath. I'm now threshing it with a combine versus 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. It would have been cut and hauled in bundles and stored up by a threshing floor and then threshed out on the threshing floor and then stored, and then further would have been beaten out to get the hull off of the husk or the hull off of the berry of wheat. This has been quite an experience here, so I just want to share it, the little bit that I have, my thoughts and the understanding that I have. This is a crop that grew of its own accord. It's related to Sabbath Year study, Sabbath cycle study. So this year, when I saw that this field was volunteering from what grew of its own accord of last year's harvest, I decided to let it to go to harvest this year, and that's what we're doing now, reaping where we did not sow. I want to share John 4:24. Quote, Elohim is a spirit, and those who worship him need to worship in spirit and truth. Unquote. My understanding of that is that truth rules over tradition of men. It's been a long time since grain was grown in the land of promise under the Sabbath year laws, under the first possession of the land, and that's what I've been thinking about and thinking about. You know, there's an idea of a second Exodus that's going to be similar in some respects to the first. So you study the first Exodus when the people were getting ready to enter the land. It was told to them what they were supposed to do. But we got to go back to the beginning. I like to go to Genesis 8:22. You have to bear with me because I'm trying to operate this machine with one hand and one on the camera, so I get a little distracted. In Genesis 8:22 it says, quote, While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So we see from Genesis, unquote I should say, we see from Genesis 8:22 that there is a mention of seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night. So seed time is the first in the order there of that list. And if you miss seed time, you surely aren't going to have harvest time. Seed time is first. That's the beginning of your agricultural cycle when you're sowing your field. That's the start, the basic start. It can't start until after the harvest is over. And it has to start upon seeding. It can't start after you've seeded. So that's the agricultural cycle beginning of seed time. Leviticus 23:10 says, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then ye shall bring a sheaf of the firstfruits of your harvest unto the priest. Unquote. So when they were to come into the land, this was a commandment, and it was a commandment that continued on year after year. Leviticus 23:14, quote, And ye shall eat neither bread, nor parched corn, nor green ears, until the self same day that ye have brought an offering unto your Elohim. It shall be a statute forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. Forbid to eat anything old I should say unquote. It was forbid to eat anything old or new from the land. That first year they were in the land, and when they entered into the land, they were forbid to eat from the land, neither bread nor parched corn nor green ears. They were forbid to eat anything until a sheaf was brought forth. And they had to have brought forth a sheaf from what was growing of the land when they entered the land, things that they had not sown. Now that first year would have been the forerunner of the Jubilee cycle that they were going to observe after they were in the land. So that first year was like a Jubilee, when the land is returned unto its families, the families that it had possessed the land before. So the promises were given before, and the ancestors had lived in the land, Abraham had lived in the land, Jacob had lived in the land. So this was a type of return to the land. So that first month, that first portion of the year when they came into the land was a type of jubilee and a type of return and renewal and reclaiming of the land. And I believe that's what it's speaking about in part in Leviticus 25:2. It says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye become into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto Yahweh." My understanding is the land was keeping a Sabbath, or was supposed to be keeping a Sabbath, when they entered the land. It was in progress. It was in a Sabbath cycle, a Jubilee cycle actually, which is a type of Sabbath following a Sabbath year, 50th year. The 49th year would be a Sabbath year, and the 50th year would also be a type of Sabbath, the Jubilee or Jubilee. So I believe that they fulfilled this, and this word was fulfilled when they entered the land, because they ate from what they had not reaped, and according to the laws of the Sabbath, that was, and the laws of Jubilee, that was permitted. It says in Leviticus 25:3, 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard, and gather in the fruit thereof. That's unquote. That's attached to 25:2 that says when you become into the land. So when you become into the land, 6 years you shall sow. To fulfill that, they would have had to sow that first agricultural season that they entered the land, because they were commanded to sow 6 years. They weren't commanded, when you come into the land, you rest for a year and you refrain from sowing. No, they were commanded to sow upon coming into the land. And I believe that's exactly what they did. They sowed the fall after that first Passover. They likely sowed some field somewhere. And I know it was a process of coming into the land fully, but they had crossed the River Jordan and had come into the land. So my thoughts on that are, when they came into the land, they had to eat from the produce of the land, and it says that they kept the Passover, and then that they did eat from some translations translate it the old store or the old crop of the land, and some say that they ate from the produce of the land. My belief on that is they may have actually eaten from that which had grown of its own accord that they found by the way in the region that they were first occupying when they crossed over the Jordan, because they crossed the Jordan on the 10th day of the month, and upon crossing, all the males were circumcised. So the males were circumcised right after they crossed over. It doesn't give you any accounts of them doing anything else other than they were healing up from their circumcision. And then they kept the Passover. And then on the 15th day of the month, the Passover is on the 14th, on the 15th day of the month, it says they did eat from the produce of the land. The King James will say the old store of the land. The Tanakh will say of the produce of the land. And I believe they ate from the produce of the land, that which was left of its own accord, growing of its own accord. I think that's really what had to happen there, because they had to bring some kind of wave sheaf. Well, you weren't going to get a wave sheaf from somebody's granary. That wouldn't be a sheaf. You know, I suppose you could do an omer offering or something like that. You know, a omer is like a dry measure, I think. But that's my understanding. I'm not doing a very good job of picking up the sloth here while I'm talking. So I just wanted to touch on those things to try to get people to think about this, that